The blast from the chamber doors hadn't even settled before the overlord stepped through, his body a towering silhouette wrapped in molten veins of living fire. His soldiers poured in behind him, their rifles glowing like suns, but every single beam of energy stopped short of Lyra, bending away as though the crystal light inside her chest was rewriting the laws of the chamber itself. Darren staggered back, his mouth open, sweat running down his temple, caught between awe and terror at the sight of her. Lyra herself could feel her heartbeat hammering against the crystal shard fused into her sternum, every pulse pumping light instead of blood through her body. She raised her hand without meaning to, and a ripple of force rushed outward, scattering alien soldiers like leaves in a storm. The overlord did not flinch. His voice cracked like thunder, resonating through the chamber walls. The vessel has awakened. His molten eyes fixed on Lyra, as though he had been waiting for this very moment across centuries. The soldiers paused at his command, their rifles lowered, though their fangs glimmered in fury. Lyra's breath hitched, and in that moment, she realized the truth. He wasn't afraid of her. He wanted her, not as an enemy, but as a piece of some design larger than anything she could comprehend. Darren stepped in front of her, broken gauntlets sparking. "You'll have to kill me first." The overlord's grin widened. "So be it." With a flick of his molten wrist, a wave of heat smashed into Darren, flinging him across the chamber into a wall. He hit the ground with a sickening thud, groaning but still alive. Lyra gasped, fury overtaking the light in her chest. She lunged forward, crystal fire flaring, and the overlord caught her arm in his burning hand. Their powers collided, crystal light and molten flame fusing into a blinding clash that shook the entire chamber. Her mind split open. Flashes came, visions not her own. A battlefield drowned in stars, humans screaming as alien warships burned the skies, and then something stranger. Humans standing tall, refusing to bow, even as entire cities turned to ash. She saw a woman with her face, but not her eyes, standing at the heart of a machine larger than mountains. The vision ended with a single whispered line that was not her own voice. Control was never yours to keep. Lyra staggered back, ripping her arm free, chest heaving. "What the hell are you doing to me?" she shouted. The overlord tilted his head, molten veins pulsing. "I'm showing you what you are, little human. You were chosen long before you believed you had control." She wanted to strike him again, to burn him alive with the crystal fire surging inside her. But something stopped her, a strange pull, almost magnetic, that drew her closer to his voice even as she hated him. She could hear her father's voice echoing from memory, telling her once that control was an illusion, that even the strongest hands could lose their grip. She had never understood then. She did now. Darren groaned from the floor, forcing himself up. "Lyra, don't listen to him." His voice cracked with desperation, his blood dripping on the stone. "He wants to turn you into what they turned me into. I was in their labs, remember? I know what they do. They don't just kill. They remake you until you don't even remember who you are." Lyra's crystal light flickered. She looked between the overlord and Darren, her pulse torn in two directions. She remembered the day she had first found Darren, broken, but still alive, trembling from the experiments they had carved into him. He had been her anchor since then, her constant reminder that survival wasn't just a word. And yet, as the overlord's molten hand reached toward her again, something inside her wanted to touch it, wanted to know what power like his felt like pressed against her skin. The chamber shook again as distant explosions echoed from above. The rebels were still fighting somewhere near the orbital line. Time was slipping away. If she stayed here, she might learn the truth of what the crystal had made her. If she ran, she might never know. The overlord leaned close, his voice low and almost intimate. "You were never in control, Lyra, but you could be, with me." His molten hand hovered inches from her chest, from the shard that had already rewritten her body. She shuddered, breath trembling, torn between revulsion and an unexplainable heat burning through her body. Darren staggered closer, coughing blood, his hand reaching toward her. "Lyra, please. You're still you. Don't let him take that away." Fight him. Fight. Her eyes darted between them. Her chest pulsed with light, so bright it threatened to split her ribs apart. Her mind screamed with two truths: that she had always believed herself in control, and that for the first time, she realized she might never have been. And then, without warning, the crystal inside her heart surged again, pulling her into a decision she wasn't ready to make. Her hand lifted on its own, pointing straight at Darren. His eyes widened, hurt and betrayal flashing across his face as her veins lit up brighter than ever. The overlord smiled. Yes. The chamber air turned white with light. The blast of light ripped through the chamber with such force that the alien soldiers dropped to their knees, covering their eyes, as if the sun itself had erupted inside stone walls. Darren braced for death, his body frozen, but the strike curved at the last second, slamming into the wall inches beside him. The shockwave threw him to the floor once more, rubble raining across his back. He coughed through the dust, lifting his head just enough to see Lyra trembling. Her hands still raised, but her face twisted in horror. She had stopped herself, but only barely. The overlord's molten laughter echoed like a choir of forges. Do you see? Even when you resist, the shard chooses its path. You think you spared him, but it was not your will. Lyra dropped to her knees, clutching her chest, as the crystal's glow dimmed and flared like a heart fighting against itself. Sweat streamed down her temples, her breaths shallow and ragged. She whispered, almost to herself, "No, I won't lose myself to this. I won't." The overlord crouched before her, massive despite the movement, his molten veins throbbing brighter with every beat of her light. "You already have, little human. Do you think your resistance matters?" That pathetic warrior on the ground. He begged you to fight, and your first strike sought his life. What will your second one do? His hand brushed her chin, and though his touch should have burned her flesh, the crystal protected her, the heat rushing through her veins instead. It felt like fire laced with desire, sharp and impossible to ignore. She jerked her head away, the movement tearing her between fury and shame. Her father's words whispered again in the back of her mind. Power is never given, is only taken. She hadn't understood then. Now she feared she finally did. Darren forced himself up, blood streaking his jaw. "Lyra," he rasped, his voice breaking. "Look at me. Don't let him take what makes you human. I've seen what happens when they twist a mind. I saw myself in the mirror and didn't recognize who I was." His eyes glistened, his voice cracking. "Don't let me lose you too." Her chest throbbed violently at his plea, the crystal light pulsing in sync with his words. For the first time, she realized that the shard wasn't just reacting to her. It was reacting to both of them. To Darren's desperation, to the overlord's seduction, to her own conflict. It was alive. Suddenly, the chamber ceiling shook with another explosion. This one was closer. A new squad of rebels must have breached the lower tunnels. The overlord's molten gaze snapped upward. "Your people claw at shadows while the stars burn. Pathetic. They should be grateful I even noticed them." His soldiers tensed, weapons raised toward the sound of intruders. Lyra's mind raced. If rebels reached the chamber, they'd see her glowing like a living weapon. Would they call her savior or executioner? Her grip on control slipped like sand through fingers, the crystal pressing harder, demanding to be unleashed. Then a flash, her own memory, but distorted by the shard. She was younger, standing at the forge with her father, hammering steel. His voice was steady. "The hammer shapes the blade, Lyra, but only because the steel surrenders. Strength isn't in the strike. It's in the will not to break." She blinked back, tears clutching the vision as though it might anchor her. The overlord noticed the flicker in her eyes. His molten voice dropped into something lower, smoother, intimate. "What did he tell you? That you could choose your own path? That control was yours." His grin widened as her breath shook. "Let me show you what your father never could. Control is not a lie. It is simply power you have not yet dared to claim." Her skin prickled with heat under his words. Not just power, but something dangerously close to temptation. She hated it, hated herself for feeling it, but the shard fed on it, glowing brighter, almost radiant enough to blind. Darren staggered forward again, each step leaving smears of blood on the floor. His voice cut through the molten whisper. "Lyra, I don't care if you burn the whole chamber down. Just don't let him be the one standing beside you when you do." Lyra's pulse raced, caught in the tug-of-war between the two men, the one who had suffered with her, and the one who promised her a strength she couldn't yet master. Her hands shook, light building to a breaking point. The ceiling ruptured with a deafening crack. Rebels stormed in, their rifles glowing blue with human plasma fire. They froze at the sight before them, Lyra kneeling in the center, glowing like a star, the overlord looming over her, and Darren bloodied at her side. The lead rebel's voice broke with shock. "Gods, what has she become?" The overlord stood tall, his molten veins blazing. "She has become mine." Lyra gasped as the shard inside her chest surged again, and her body lifted inches off the floor, light spilling from her eyes. Her scream echoed through the chamber, not of pain, but of a power too vast for her to contain. The rebels raised their weapons in fear. Darren reached for her desperately. The overlord reached too, molten hand stretching with certainty. And in that suspended moment, as the entire chamber held its breath, Lyra's glowing eyes locked onto the rebels, her own people, and she felt the crystal make its choice for her again. The light burst outward from Lyra like the dawn breaking through centuries of night. The rebels staggered, shielding their eyes, some dropping rifles that clattered uselessly to the floor. But instead of searing them, the wave of crystal energy washed gently over their skin, leaving trails of faint silver light across their armor. Their fear turned to awe. One whispered hoarsely, "She spared us." Another muttered, "She chose humanity." The overlord snarled, molten veins pulsing brighter. "No, that was not her. That was me denied." His fury shook the walls, molten cracks splitting the stone. He raised his hand, summoning a pillar of fire that curled upward like a serpent preparing to strike. Lyra, still suspended in air, felt the shard beat harder, as though answering the overlord's rage with its own. Her voice came out doubled, layered with something alien. "You don't own me." Darren collapsed to one knee, clutching his ribs, his bloodied eyes locked on her. Relief trembled across his face. "That's it, Lyra. Hold on to that." But even as he said it, he saw her veins glowing too bright, her body trembling as if it might shatter. She was winning this moment, but at what cost? The rebels began to rally. Plasma bolts shot across the chamber, slamming into alien soldiers. Blue sparks mixed with molten fire, the underground chamber turning into a storm of light and death. One rebel officer shouted, "Protect the girl. She's our weapon now." The words sliced through Lyra like a blade sharper than any alien steel. Weapon. She was no longer Lyra, the daughter, the fighter, the rebel. She was an object, a tool, a weapon. Her vision blurred, tears streaking down her cheeks, even as crystal fire raged from her body. Memories surged, the warmth of her father's hand guiding hers on a hammer. The first time she had laughed with Darren after the escape from the labs. The fleeting peace of believing she could be something more than a survivor. And now, stripped of name and flesh, reduced to the thing inside her chest. The overlord saw her weakness, and he smiled, molten fangs glimmering. "Yes, human. Even your own people would rather chain you than lose you. You think you stand with them? They will fear you more than they fear me." His molten hand lashed forward, smashing aside two rebels with ease. He strode toward her, unstoppable. Lyra dropped back to the ground, knees buckling, the shard pulsing wildly. She clutched at her chest, gasping, I'm still me." But even as she said it, her hand glowed brighter, shifting into something almost translucent, light radiating from bone and blood. She didn't know if she was telling the truth anymore. Darren stumbled to her side, dragging himself upright with sheer will. He grabbed her arm, forcing her to meet his bloodied face. "You're not a weapon, Lyra. You're not his. You're not theirs. You're mine because I believe in you." His voice cracked on a last word, but it cut through the chamber louder than fire or crystal. Her breath caught. For a heartbeat, the crystal flickered dimmer, as though considering those words. But the overlord's molten hand slammed down, seizing Darren by the throat, lifting him off the ground. His molten voice thundered, "You dare claim what is not yours?" Lyra's scream split the chamber. She raised both hands without thinking, and the crystal exploded outward in a beam of silver fire. The blast struck the overlord full in the chest, hurling him back across the chamber into the far wall. Molten cracks spiderwebbed across his armor as he roared in fury, flames sputtering around him. For the first time, he looked shaken. Darren collapsed to the floor, gasping for air, his throat seared but unbroken. Rebels cheered, firing harder, pressing the advantage. The alien soldiers faltered, some retreating. Hope surged through human hearts. But Lyra stood frozen, staring at her hands. They no longer looked human. Light bled through her skin like cracks in glass, her fingers trembling as if she no longer controlled them. Her voice came out hollow, alien, layered again. I don't know where I end, and it begins." Darren crawled toward her, forcing his broken body to move. He reached her trembling hands, holding them against his chest despite the glow. "Then let me remind you, you're Lyra, and you'll always be Lyra, no matter what this shard wants." She shook her head, tears spilling even as light blazed from her eyes. "What if it's stronger than me? What if it takes me? You saw I almost killed you. What if next time I don't stop?" Darren's voice was raw, almost a whisper. "Then I'll stand in front of you until you learn how to stop. Because I'd rather die than let you face this alone." Her chest convulsed, the crystal pulsing in a rhythm too fast, too violent. She clutched at him, half in desperation, half in fear she would break him apart if she didn't let go. And then, a sudden silence fell across the chamber. The fighting paused. Rebels and aliens alike turned to look. The overlord stood, molten cracks sealing slowly across his body, his grin returning despite the smoke curling from his form. But his eyes, his molten eyes, were fixed not on Lyra, not on Darren, but on the chamber wall behind them. The stone split open, runes igniting in lines of silver. A doorway began to emerge, wider and taller than anything human or alien had built. From within came a sound, not fire, not crystal, but a heartbeat. A heartbeat that matched the shard inside Lyra's chest. Her body convulsed, the shard sinking with it. Her scream ripped through the chamber again as the doorway's light pulled at her, dragging her toward it. Darren grabbed her shoulders, holding on, but the force nearly tore him away. The overlord's molten voice rumbled low, almost reverent. "Ah, the true chamber awakens. The shard was never meant to rest in flesh. It calls her to the forge of eternity." Lyra's veins blazed brighter than ever, her body trembling like it might tear apart. "Darren, don't let go," she cried, her voice breaking between human and alien tones. The chamber wall split wider, light flooding everything, and Lyra's feet lifted from the ground again, dragged inexorably toward the glowing doorway. The city trembled again as Lyra pushed deeper into the underworks, every step swallowed by the grinding pulse of ancient machines that refused to die. The walls sweated rust, and steam hissed from cracks like the place itself was breathing in panic. She moved fast, but not carelessly, her pulse drumming hard enough to make her vision swim. Rourke's last transmission still echoed in her head, the half-sentence choked out before static had claimed his voice, and the way he had said her name like a warning. No, like a farewell. She tried to shake it off, but her mind kept replaying the old pain she had buried, the sound of another voice dying in her ear years ago when she had been too slow to reach the evac shuttle, her younger brother's scream cut short as fire took the hangar. She had sworn she would never freeze again, but the memory crawled under her skin like cold fire. The tunnels opened suddenly into a chamber lit by violent strobes of red emergency lamps. Shapes moved in the shadows, twisted silhouettes hunched low, dragging blades across metal, eyes glowing like coals. They weren't soldiers. They were something worse, scavenger-born hybrids, grown from the leftover war labs of alien scientists, a fusion of flesh and machine bred for nothing but cruelty. They stirred as they sensed her, their heads cocking in perfect, insect-like synchronization. Lyra froze. One wrong step, one sound, and they would rush her with razors for limbs. Her hand went to the weapon at her side, but she knew the math. 7 of them. One of her. She'd fire, maybe take 2, but the rest would tear her apart before she could breathe. The air tasted of blood already, and she realized the ground was slick with it, old, half-dried pools where others had fallen. She backed slowly, breath caught in her throat, when a voice hissed out of the dark, too close to be real. "You shouldn't be here, Lyra." It was not one of the scavengers. It was deeper, human, but cracked, familiar wrong. Her heart skipped, and the hybrids turned toward the sound, as if obeying it. Then he stepped forward, Rourke. But not Rourke. His armor was torn, his face marked by unnatural burns, his eyes hollowed by something that wasn't just pain. He looked like a man dragged through fire and rebuilt with shadow. Her mind rebelled, but her gut screamed. This wasn't her comrade anymore. He smiled, or something close to it, and the hybrids twitched as if waiting for his command. "Do you see it now?" he rasped. The war never ended. It just changed shape. And so did I. Lyra's chest locked tight. Every instinct told her to run, yet she stood rooted, staring at him, trying to understand. "What happened to you?" she forced out, voice breaking. For a heartbeat, the scavengers hissed, impatient, their claws rattling. Rourke tilted his head, almost in mockery. "I survived what you didn't. The core spoke to me. It showed me truth. You think you're fighting for humanity, Lyra? Humanity is already dead. I can give you what's left if you kneel." The words struck her harder than the thread of claws ever could. The scavengers stirred, circling closer, red light stroking their blades. Her mind tore between past and present, between the boy she had once sworn to protect in the hangar fire and the man in front of her asking her to break. The seconds stretched like knives in her chest, and then the chamber walls groaned, alarms screamed, and the floor began to split open under their feet, metal cracking wide to reveal a furnace glow from the levels below. Something massive was rising, something older than all of them. Lyra stumbled back as the hybrid shrieked and Rourke's broken grin widened, his silhouette haloed by the burning light below. His last words to her before the floor gave way were quiet, intimate, poisonous. "You'll choose me, or you'll burn with them." The floor gave way like the belly of a dying beast, and Lyra plummeted into fire. The scream tore itself out of her throat before she realized she was still alive, suspended mid-fall, wrapped in a halo of silver-blue light that pulsed from the shard within her chest. It caught her like unseen hands, lowering her gently, even as molten metal roared beneath. The hybrids were not so fortunate. 2 vanished into the furnace with bone-melting shrieks. The others clung to the edges of the breach, their claws digging deep into steel, hissing like cornered predators. And Rourke, he stood above, untouched, watching her descend into the light as if he had known this would happen all along. The chamber below was not a furnace at all. It was a crucible. A massive, circular platform floated above rivers of liquid metal, ancient conduits channeling that molten flow through symbols older than human language. In the center of the platform stood a monolith, blacker than space itself, carved with glyphs that shifted when you looked at them too long. It pulsed with the same heartbeat as the shard in her chest. It knew she was here. It had been waiting. The light released her, and Lyra stumbled forward, boots clanging against the platform. The heat was unbearable, sweat slicking her skin, but it wasn't the furnace that burned her. It was the presence. A voice that wasn't a voice slid into her mind, soft as silk and sharp as razors. "You were never meant to fight. You were meant to ascend." She clutched her head, shaking it violently. "Get out of my mind." But the voice laughed, a sound that wasn't sound, resonating in every cell of her body. "You think you're still flesh. You think choice matters. It is only a matter of when you surrender, not if." The monolith cracked open like an eye, and from its center rose a pillar of light that wrapped itself around her body, lifting her off the ground. Her armor disintegrated atom by atom, stripped away as if it were dust, and the shard pulsed harder with every layer of metal and cloth removed. Panic surged. She was exposed, vulnerable, but then the fear twisted into something stranger, deeper. The light wasn't destroying her. It was rewriting her. Every nerve sang. Every cell lit up. The shard was fusing deeper, not just inside her chest, but into her being. Memories flooded back, not just hers. Alien skies she had never seen. Empires that had risen and fallen before Earth even formed. Beings of light and thought who had created the shards as conduits of evolution. They had built warriors, messengers, lovers, destroyers. And now they had built her. "Stop!" she screamed, but the word came out wrong, layered, doubled, as if two voices spoke from her throat. One human, one not. The light flared brighter, tracing fractal patterns across her skin, weaving itself into her very bones. Her breath came in gasps, not just from pain, but from the overwhelming flood of sensation. Heat, cold, ecstasy, terror, all colliding at once. She could feel everything, every heartbeat in the molten rivers, every ripple of electromagnetic energy coursing through the station, every pulse of life above where Darren still fought for her. It was too much. It was beautiful. It was unbearable. Then the voice returned, softer now, almost tender. "Do you see now, child of carbon and chaos? This is not a curse. It is what you were meant to become. Do not resist what you already are." Her body convulsed. Part of her wanted to surrender, to let go of fear, of pain, of the endless war, to rise beyond flesh and grief. And yet, Darren's voice echoed in her skull. "You're not a weapon. You're mine because I believe in you." Her father's laugh, the warmth of her brother's hand, the way sunlight had fell on her face before the war. All the fragile, breakable, human things she was about to lose. "No," she whispered, tears burning against her glowing skin. "I'm still me." The monolith pulsed once, a soundless heartbeat, and the light faltered just slightly. And that hesitation was all she needed. She reached deep, clawing past the alien tide, gripping the shard not as a gift but as a choice. Her choice. The pillar screamed. Yes, screamed, a sound like metal tearing apart, and the chamber around her shook. The glyphs went wild. The molten rivers surged, and for the first time the ancient system seemed uncertain. From above, the ceiling exploded. Rebel grappling lines snapped through the smoke as Darren and a strike team descended into the crucible. Plasma fire followed them, searing through hybrid flesh. Darren landed hard on the platform, his rifle slung and his eyes locked on her. "Lyra," he shouted, voice raw. "Fight it." "I'm trying," she screamed back, her body still trapped in the spiraling storm of light. "It's too strong." Darren sprinted forward, ignoring the heat, ignoring the shaking platform. He reached for her, and as his fingers brushed her skin, a surge of power erupted between them, throwing him back. But in that instant, something changed. The shard recognized him. It remembered him, and the alien voice faltered. "What is this?" It hissed. "What binds you so tightly to the weak?" Lyra's answer came with a snarl. "Love." The word detonated like a weapon, shattering the chamber silence. The light around her cracked, fissures racing across the monolith's surface. For the first time since the war began, the ancient machine feared her. And then silence. Dead, terrifying silence. The monolith stopped pulsing. The shard in her chest went still. And from deep within the crucible, something else woke up. Something older than the shard. Something that had been sealed for millennia beneath the chamber floor. The molten rivers reversed direction, sucked downward into a widening black void. The platform shuddered and tilted. Darren looked at her, horror in his eyes. "Lyra, where did you just wake up?" Her answer was swallowed by the roar as the floor split beneath them, and the crucible fell into darkness. The crucible plummeted into blackness, but it wasn't just a fall. It was a transition. The world stretched and warped around them as though gravity had forgotten its laws. The molten rivers above were pulled down like threads into a loom, weaving a tapestry of impossible light. Lyra's scream caught in her throat as the shard in her chest flared, slowing her descent with tendrils of energy. Around her, rebels clung to whatever they could, Darren hanging one-handed from a broken girder as if sheer will alone would hold him in place. Then impact. The platform slammed against something solid, throwing men and metal sprawling. Lyra hit her knees, coughing, the glow from her veins sputtering like a failing star. But the darkness didn't swallow them. It breathed. Vast caverns open around them, not of stone, but of ancient alloy, walls the size of cities, etched with symbols that pulsed faintly like sleeping embers. A structure buried under their war. Not alien, not rebel, something older. "Where the hell are we?" one of the rebels whispered, his voice tiny in the endless dark. Darren hauled himself up, bleeding from his brow, his rifle raised though it seemed laughably small here. He glanced at Lyra, his face hardening. "This isn't part of the station. It's a tomb." The word echoed, and the tomb answered. A vibration rolled through the air, low and resonant, rattling their bones. The walls lit up in sequence, glyphs igniting one by one until the cavern shone with golden fire. And at the center of it all rose a throne, not carved, not built, but grown from the very alloy itself. Upon it sat a figure. At first glance it was humanoid, but no human had ever been that tall, that perfect. Its flesh was not flesh, but sculpted crystal, its veins glowing with the same molten fire Lyra had seen in the alien overlords. Yet it was different, colder. Its eyes opened slowly, two suns in a flawless face, and the cavern hushed as if afraid to breathe. The shard in Lyra's chest pulsed violently. She staggered, clutching at it, every beat like a hammer against her ribs. The voice that had haunted her before was gone, replaced by another, deeper, older, carved into her soul. At last it said, not just in her mind, but in the minds of everyone present, "The vessel brings me back." Rebels dropped their weapons, some screaming, some clutching their heads, as if the voice itself split them open. Hybrids still alive from the fall clawed their way into the chamber, but even they stopped, trembling before the throne. Their master had returned. The figure rose. Each movement was deliberate, terrifyingly graceful, like a god remembering how to walk. Chains Lyra hadn't seen before snapped and fell from its arms, dissolving into dust as they hit the floor. Its gaze fell upon her, and in that instant she knew. It wasn't looking at Lyra. It was looking at the shard. "You," it said aloud, its voice shaking the cavern. "The last fragment of my soul, buried in flesh. How long I have waited for this convergence." Lyra shook her head violently, stumbling back. "No, you're not taking me. You're not taking this." It smiled, a perfect, terrible smile. "It is not yours to refuse. You were in control only because I allowed it. Now, my little vessel, you will kneel." Energy ripped through the cavern. Rebels were hurled like rag dolls against the walls. Hybrids collapsed, their armor cracking under invisible weight. Darren alone remained standing, braced against the storm, his rifle useless in his hands, but his eyes locked on Lyra. "Fight it!" he shouted again, but the sound was swallowed by the roar. Lyra fell to her knees, not from choice, but from force. The shard in her chest screamed with light, her body arching against it, sweat and tears mingling as she clawed at her own skin. Images flooded her, the figure's memories. Worlds burning at its command, empires kneeling, lovers breaking beneath its touch. It wasn't just power, it was domination incarnate. She felt her will fraying, her identity slipping away like sand in water. "No," she gasped, but her voice cracked. Her arms trembled, her chest heaved. "I won't be. I won't." The figure descended from the throne, each footstep resonating like thunder. It stood before her now, a colossus of crystal and fire, reaching down. Its hand hovered inches from her face. "You are not resisting me, child. You are becoming me. You are what I was always meant to be. You were never in control, until now." Its hand touched her cheek, and something inside her shattered. Not the shard, not her body, something deeper, a dam she hadn't known she carried. All the grief, all the rage, all the love, everything she had buried under duty and pain and war. It ripped free, colliding with the shards' alien tide. For 1 second, one blinding, impossible second, Lyra wasn't just human. She wasn't just vessel. She was both. And the collision was nuclear. A shock wave blasted outward, vaporizing hybrids instantly, tearing glyphs off the walls, toppling ancient spires in the cavern. Darren was thrown clear across the platform, barely catching a ledge before he fell into the abyss. The crystal figure staggered for the first time in millennia, its flawless surface cracking with spiderweb fractures. And Lyra stood. Her eyes glowed with twin fires, one human, one alien. Her veins burned with power not meant for flesh, yet somehow still hers. She looked at the figure, her voice steady, dangerous. "You're wrong. I was in control the moment I chose to resist." The figure tilted its head, studying her. For the first time, its smile faltered. "Then you're the most dangerous thing this galaxy has ever birthed." It raised its hand again, and the cavern began to collapse. Molten rivers bursting from the walls, lightning arcing between glyphs as the tomb itself prepared to bury them all. And in that storm of ruin, Lyra launched herself at the god. Lyra collided with the god in a flash of light that should have annihilated her. The shard flared, their energies clashing so violently the cavern split open like an eggshell. The throne disintegrated into dust. The molten rivers turned to pillars of fire, and the very air screamed under the pressure. For one endless instant, flesh fought crystal while battled dominion, and the clash was so total that reality itself bent around them. The god's hand closed around her arm, fingers like steel digging into her flesh. It tried to flood her again, to drown her in its ancient hunger. Images slammed into her skull, galaxies kneeling, billions erased, 1,000 lovers discarded like broken toys. But Lyra had her own flood now. She saw her father teaching her to fix an engine with scraped knuckles. She saw her brother's laughter echoing through the barracks. She saw Darren's face the night he swore he'd follow her into hell. Those memories were hers. Untouchable. "You'll never own me," she hissed, and she drove her glowing hand into its chest. The crack in the god's body widened, light spilling out in violent spasms. It roared, a sound like stars collapsing, staggering backward as if the impossible had finally struck it. Resistance. The shard in Lyra's chest pulsed in unison, ripping strands of its power away and weaving them into her instead. She wasn't just holding against it anymore. She was stealing it. Darren, half crushed under debris, lifted his head and saw her silhouetted in fire, her hair whipping like a banner, her skin alive with silver light. His lips moved, a whisper only he could hear, "My God, she's winning." The cavern didn't agree. Walls caved in, molten rivers surged, lightning ripped down from the glyphs, each bolt shaking the tomb like the world's own heartbeat. Rebels screamed as the floor gave way beneath them. One after another, they tumbled into the abyss. Darren scrambled to pull two men back, his hands bloody, his body failing, but his eyes never left Lyra. The god bellowed, its flawless face twisting with rage. "You think you can destroy me, child? I have conquered entire civilizations. I have remade reality." Lyra's voice was raw, ragged, but stronger than it had ever been. "Then you've never faced humanity." She drove the shard's power deeper, pulling until she thought her body would explode. Every nerve burned. Her vision fractured into kaleidoscopes of agony and light. But she didn't let go. She couldn't. The god's chest split apart with a deafening crack, light spilling out in a flood that blinded everyone in the cavern. For a moment, it looked like she had won. And then the god laughed. Even broken, even burning, it laughed, the sound shaking the ruins into dust. "Foolish vessel, you think you win me by breaking my form? You have only freed me. I am not bound to this shape. I am the fire between stars, the will of dominion itself." And now, its cracked body leaned closer, voice dripping with venom. "Now you are my anchor." Before she could recoil, its fractured hand plunged into her chest, fingers phasing through flesh and bone, gripping the shard itself. Pain exploded through her, not physical but existential, as if it were pulling her very soul free. She screamed, body convulsing, her knees buckling as the god's laughter filled her skull. The light from the shard turned wild, chaotic, half hers, half his. Darren saw it happening. His eyes widened with horror, and he stumbled forward, ignoring the collapsing cavern, ignoring the flames. Lyra, fight him. Don't let him take you. She wanted to. God, she wanted to. But the pull was relentless. She felt herself slipping, not just into death but into obliteration. Her edges blurred, her humanity dissolved. Her memories, her father, her brother, Darren, they flickered, vanishing one by one like candle flames in the wind. And through the haze, she saw the god's cracked, grinning face, victorious even in ruin. No, she whispered, her voice broken. Not like this. The god leaned closer, its fractured body glowing like magma. Yes, little vessel. Like this. Then something unexpected happened. The shard pulsed, not in surrender, but in defiance. It wasn't just responding to her. It was responding to them, to her humanity, to Darren's scream, to the fragments of every rebel still alive, still refusing to kneel even as the cavern buried them. It wasn't just a conduit for the god. It was a mirror. It reflected will. And right now, Lyra's will was ablaze. She seized it. One last surge. One last scream that tore her throat raw. I am not yours. The cavern detonated. Light consumed everything. Rebels, hybrids, molten rivers, the god itself. The shockwave tore through the tomb and raced upward, shattering the station above, blowing holes through orbiting ships. A silent, star-bright explosion visible from the planet below. And when the light faded, silence, ruins, molten rivers cooling into ash. Darren crawling through rubble, coughing, bleeding, his hands clawing at the stone. Lyra, he rasped. Where are you? No answer. He stumbled onto the broken platform, eyes burning, searching desperately through dust and shattered alloy. At the center lay the remains of the god. Nothing but cracked crystal husk, its fire extinguished. And beside it, crumpled and still, was Lyra. Her skin glowed faintly. The shard dimmed almost to nothing. Her chest rose shallowly, once, twice, then stopped. Darren fell to his knees, his cry echoing through the ruins. No, no, please. Not you. His hand pressed against her chest, desperate for a heartbeat, for any flicker of life. But there was nothing. And then her eyes snapped open. They weren't her eyes. Not fully. They glowed with the same molten fire as the god. And her voice, when she spoke, was layered, human and something else. Something terrifying. I told you, she whispered, staring at him with a smile that wasn't hers. I was never in control. The